have risen from the ashes to school the masses. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Scholars of Wrestling Show, episode 214. I'm your man behind the microphone, Scholar Jeff. To my right is Mr. Scholar in the Bank himself, Scholar Tarek. What's up, sir?
I am very proud of you right now. You are actually acknowledging the fact that I am Mr. Scholar in the Bank. It took you long enough, and again, thank you.
You are quite welcome. And, of course, to my other side is the current reigning Scholars of Wrestling champion, Scholar Brian. What's up, sir?
Let's get it completely correct. If I'm going to be champion, I've got to say it like Scholar Tarek used to, okay? The current reigning, defending, undisputed Scholars of Wrestling champion, Scholar Brian. That is. I will admit it. I will admit it. Okay, it's a good line, so I will take it if I have to.
And you just have to acknowledge that you're just got to do what I have to do.
No, and
I am the scholar,
but
you
know what?
Are inspiring to me.
It's okay. It's okay because I know where you got it from. Okay, you did not come up with that on your own.
But you acknowledged that you were taking something from my playbook.
As long as you acknowledge that you were taking it from somebody else's playbook.
Yes, I am fully aware that I'm taking this out of Paul Heyman's playbook.
So we're good. Moving on.
And you're taking it all out of my psyche right now. But that's beside the point. The point is...
the guy who has neither a title or a briefcase.
Only momentarily. But you know what I do have? A show to run. And we've got a lot to talk about this week in wrestling, including quite a bit of sad news in the world of wrestling this week. But we'll talk about all of that and more in this week's edition of Backstage News.
Because it's such a depressing topic we're discussing, I feel adding some kind of humor backstage news intro is just not the right time for it. So, no backstage news, I feel.
It's a sad meh.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm
sorry. It actually is very depressing.
Well, it is. We definitely took a hit. And in case you're not familiar with what exactly we're talking about, we are talking specifically about Brickhouse Brown, Nikolai Volkov, and Brian Christopher, a.k.a. Grandmaster Sexay, all passed away on the same day this past Sunday.
Within a few hours of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So, Brickhouse Brown, it was announced at first that he died about a week beforehand.
I actually read this story.
It's one of those, like, you knew it was coming because it was stage 4 terminal cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you knew it was coming, they just announced it a week too early.
At that point, he actually was dead. He was dead.
Yeah.
And as they were basically tying the what's it called, the toe tag.
Mm.
They're just as soon as they're tying it on, he's just like, "Yep, hey, how's it going?
What are you doing?
How's it going?"
And so he lasted another week, but at that time, like, you knew
it was coming.
It was coming.
So
yeah. And
Nikolai Volkov, okay, the first big foreign villain. It's the name that you know when they talk about foreign villains. It's like it's one of the first two that pop up. Okay,
yeah, it's like Iron Sheik
it's Nikolai
and then Nikolai Volkov.
It's Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik. So we lost a really like a pioneer in the art of heeldom, really, with Nikolai Volkov. And Brian Christopher, that's just a fucked up situation all around.
Yeah, that's again, for me personally, I really didn't have a lot of experience with Brickhouse Brown. Nikolai Volkov was a little bit before my time, before I started watching wrestling and WWF and all of that stuff. Brian Christopher, Grandmaster Sexay, this hit me absolutely harder more than any of them. Not just because he was part of the era of WWF when I started watching, or at least not too long after it, but just the whole story that came out about it. So that is by far the saddest one of all.
Because what was it? He got a year of solitary confinement or something, and it fucked with his head so much that he felt that there was no other way than to do what he did.
The fact that his father, Jerry the King Lawler, was just like, you got to learn your lesson. I can't keep bailing you out, so I'm not bailing you out this time. And it just didn't work. He couldn't handle it. Attempted to kill himself.
And finished.
Then he was pretty much.
It took a little while to actually get the job done.
He was pretty much brain dead.
Yeah.
At the time, but they kept him plugged just so everyone could say their goodbyes, and that was the end of it.
Yeah, and even though all that stuff went down, there was still all those struggles with drugs and alcohol and all of that stuff, even years before that.
Yeah, the struggles that you hear all the time about guys from that era, Brian Lawler was like at the forefront of when you would hear shit about drugs and alcohol and all that. He was one of the first names that you would hear caught up in all that. So it's one of those where, once again, like, he was out of the public eye for a while, so you didn't really think about it all that much. But back in the day, it was always in the back of your head, like, hey, this guy might be one of the next for all the shit to come on down, like Crash Holly and all them.
Yeah.
So he was always in that conversation, and then everything went down where he left and all that, and he left the public eye. Like, you didn't really hear much from him for about 5-10 years. So, and this really came out of nowhere. Because when you're out of the public eye for that long, people stop thinking about you. So it's like, oh, Brian Christopher died. What? When back in the day, it was like, it would have been like, huh, yeah, that kind of makes sense. That's it.
Yeah, and I don't know what your experience has been lately in the past week or so, but I feel like I've been getting a whole bunch of just stories that run the gamut of what kind of guy he was. Like, yes, we all know about his demons and all the things the mistakes he made.
Do we really trust the likes of New Jack and Sabu to
don't bring them up?
But I mean,
don't bring them up, because.
But I mean, do we really trust the likes of them to give us the true character of somebody?
No, absolutely not. And they're not even worth our time on this show. But neither of them are.
But the point I'm trying to make is, for every instance of that, I would also hear another story about, say, from one guy working an indie show, or one guy who ran an indie promotion, where he was booked on right after he got released from WWF at the time. Mm-hmm. So his stock was like, we're talking thousands of dollars for a booking fee at this venue. The show absolutely tanked. So at the end of the night, according to this guy, Brian Christopher gave the promoter an envelope, which was half of his booking fee. And he just told him, you know what, I've been where you are. My family's been in the territories and in the wrestling business my whole life. I've seen this before. I know what it's like. Take half of my booking fee back, use it to pay out the rest of the guys, and just pay it forward down the road. So even though, I mean, let's face it, have any of us ever actually met Grandmaster Sexay or anybody from Too Cool?
No.
No. Granted, at this point, I don't think either of us will ever know the full truth. But as far as I'm concerned, this is one of those cases where even if everything everyone ever says is true, extreme or not, there's way more to a person than how they perceive themselves to be, and how we perceive them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like we all know that the guy had his demons, and because of those demons, he could probably come off as an asshole to people like half the time, but then you get the other half where he does with the story that you said. So it's like you can't get the true measure of a guy who's on the kind of stuff he was on.
Yeah, it's a true shame, and let's face it, the world is lesser for having him without us. Mm-hmm. So no matter what no matter what anyone says about you, no matter what you say about yourself, I'm sure you're hearing this from a lot of other people, a lot of other PSAs, and they're getting it from 3 randos on the internet. If you're in trouble, there are people who are willing to help. There are suicide hotlines, there's mental health professionals in your community right now who are willing to help. So if you really need someone, please. There are those who care about you even if you don't know. Reach out. Your life is worth it. Period.
Nothing more else can be said.
Other than, we'll miss all 3 of these guys, especially the ones we have the most connection to, which I think at this point is Brian Christopher for a lot of us personally.
Yes.
So.
We'll miss Brian Christopher because we actually watched him. We'll miss Nikolai Volkov because he's the one who made the Foreign Hills that we have today. And Brickhouse Brown, don't really know you.
I've watched it. After finding out what happened, I knew we were going to talk about him. I watched a couple of his matches.
Yeah,
he was pretty good. He's only had a short time in WWF, so that's probably why they didn't really acknowledge him. But he definitely was big on the independent scene.
And it comes down to this, as it normally would, and really all we can say at this point: cancer sucks.
Yes,
that's it, and that's pretty much it. It takes out everybody. So Brickhouse Brown, nice
rest
to know
easy.
you. Have a
rest easy.
Yes,
and there you go. We're gonna miss all you guys. See you down the road one day. But in the meantime, we look from the past to the present and the future, starting off with This Week in Wrestling and this week's Monday Night Raw. Oh. Now, I will say right from the get-go, I've got a bone to pick in particular with this week's Monday Night Raw, specifically the Elias and Bobby Lashley segment.
You know what?
I'm gonna let you have this one.
You know what? Let's start off with that one because of course the entire Raw was about Brock Lesnar being there, but this is definitely one that I really wanted to talk about. And
so did I.
And the fact that you told me before we started recording, you actually have a bone to pick with it. I can't wait to hear this.
Tarek and I are gonna drop our non-existent microphones and hand the show over to Jeff.
Okay. I will freely admit that I was never the biggest fan of Bobby Lashley. Not from the day he first debuted back in the day. I never saw any of his run in TNA. I freely admit that, even though you and several other people have told me, oh, hey, he's really good. Now, when he got re-signed, I was like, okay, maybe he's improved. Maybe the booking team has a better way to use him. They'll be great. Okay, another big hoss to eventually go after Brock Lesnar. And then, it'll be, okay, a big buff baby face versus Bork Laser, and it'll be all great. I must have missed the memo, or someone in WWE booking must have missed the memo about how much this guy has improved. Because even right from the get-go, it really seems like time just has stood still. Life has put the pause button on Bobby Lashley and just picked up wherever they left off. Oh, but wait, now he's got a headband. Woohoo. Now, here we are with a completely bombed feud with the king of charisma himself, Roman Reigns. And now we've got a completely ridiculous series of vignettes and matches between him and Sami Zayn. And now we're moving on to a guy I've actually come to like more and more progressively, week by bloody week, Elias. I am now walking with Elias. I'm now hooked into everything Elias is doing.
Did you download his CD?
I have not yet to do that. I'm going to stream it, and I'm very excited to do so, and possibly even buy his shirt.
I'm going to watch the documentary tonight.
And then Bobby Lashley shows up. I'm going to put this right out there.